Here follows a parable in which the mystery of a whole matter is declared. Once upon a time, when I was walking abroad in a wood, and considering the wretchedness of this life, and deploring that, through the lamentable fall of our first parents, we had been reduced to this pitiable state, I suddenly found myself upon a rough, untrodden, and impracticable path, which was beset with briars. When I was afraid, and strove to retrace my steps, but it was not in my power to do so, for so violent a tempest blew upon me from behind that it was easier to take 10 steps forward than to take one backwards. So I had to hurry forward and follow the rugged path up and down hill. After a while, I reached a beautiful meadow, surrounded with heavy-laden fruit trees, which the inhabitants of the place called the Meadow of Happiness. There I met a crowd of decrepit men with grey beards, one of whom, an elderly personage, had a long darkish beard, whom also I knew by name, but whose face I had never seen. These men were discussing various subjects, e.g., the goodness and wisdom of God, all natural objects, and especially the great mystery which lies hid in nature, which, they said, God conceals from the whole world, and makes known only to a few who truly love him. I listened to them for a while, for I was pleased with their discourse, till I thought that some were talking rather wildly, not in regard to the substance and the method, but as concerns parables, similitudes, etc., which were the figments of Aristotle, Pliny, and others. When I heard these things, I could no longer contain myself, and like Saul among the prophets, I began to give my opinion, and to refute those futile assertions by arguments drawn from experience and reason. Some of them agreed with me, and began to test my knowledge with many questions, but I was so well grounded that I stood the test to the admiration of all. They all marvelled at the soundness of my knowledge, and affirmed with one voice that I should be received into their fellowship. These words were filled me with great joy, but they said I could not be their brother until I knew their lion, and his internal and external properties. They told me I must summon up my whole strength to subdue him. I confidently replied that I would leave no stone unturned to attain this object, for their kindness affected me, so that I would not have left them for all the wealth of this world. Therefore, they conducted me to the lion, and were at great pains to declare to me his nature, but no one would tell me how I must treat him at first. Some of them did indeed mutter a few words on this point, but so confusedly and obscurely that scarce 1 in 1,000 would have understood their meaning. However, they said that when I had bound him without being harmed by his sharp claws and terrible teeth, I should know all the rest. This lion was old, fierce, great, and terrible to behold, with his flowing yellow mane. Then I repented of my temerity, and would gladly have retreated if I had not been held to my purpose by my vow, and the old men had surrounded me. So I carefully descended into the lion's den, and strove to pacify him, but he glared upon me with red eyes, and affrighted me so that I could hardly stand upon my feet, and thought that my last hour had come. But calling to mind what one of the old men had said to me when I entered the den, namely, that many had undertaken to tame the lion, but that only few had accomplished it, I summoned up courage and tried several artifices, which I had learned by diligent training. Moreover, I had some knowledge of natural magic. I therefore relinquished my brandishments, and seized him so gently, skilfully, and subtly, that almost before he knew what I was about, I had drawn all the blood from his body, and from his very heart and bowels. This blood was red indeed, but choleric. Then I proceeded to dissect him, and made a most marvellous discovery. His bones were as white as snow, and their quantity more considerable than that of the blood. When the old men who stood round the den and had watched our struggles saw this, they began to converse with great eagerness, as I could see from their gestures. For, being in the den, I could not hear their words, but anon their dispute began to run high, and I could distinguish these words: "He must bring him to life again if he wishes to be our brother." Therefore, without further delay, I stepped out of the den into a large open space, and then suddenly, I know not how,